Do you think your peers influence your judgments and decisions? Have you ever felt pressure from your peers to engage in a particular behavior? If so, was it something you would have done on your own? This presentation will be focused on this idea of peer influence and decision making. We will explain how the biases in the brain that form due to the presence and the behavior of our peers lead us to engage in particular behaviors. Peers have an important role in the social and emotional development of children and adolescents, and their influence begins early on. They can be positive and supportive, but they can also have a negative influence on judgments. Peer pressure occurs when a group of peers causes you to change your decisions, beliefs, or behavior. This aligns with the psychological theory of behaviorism, in which people's behavior changes as a result of environmental stimuli. Environmental stimuli have always influenced our behavior and informed our biases. This is an innate aspect of human decision-making. In the case of peer influence, the environmental stimulus is the presence of peers who impact resulting behavior. Decisions are a product of both cognitive and affective input, even when affect is unrelated to the choices under evaluation. Adolescent risk-taking tendencies derive in part from a maturational gap between early adolescent remodeling of the brain's socio-emotional reward system and a gradual, prolonged strengthening of the cognitive control system. Seeing the brain adjustments occurring in the adolescent brain, it makes sense that adolescents are more prone to peer influence. This increase in antisocial behavior happens because the adolescent brain is reaching socio-emotional maturity, but the cognitive control is not fully developed, so they engage in social mimicry. Although individuals at every age are susceptible to peer influence, adolescents are most vulnerable. In regards to risk-taking, it is much more likely in adolescents than that of adults to occur in the presence of peers, as demonstrated in studies of reckless driving, substance abuse, and crime. The presence of peers may promote this risk-taking by sensitizing brain regions associated with the anticipation of potential rewards. Although peer influence has many positive aspects, its negative influence has many repercussions for society as a whole. Seeing that peer influence biases judgments and decision-making, it often leads to illegal activity and even arrest or incarceration. With the rise of social media and technology, there is a constant presence of peers, whether that be virtual or tangible, that are impacting the way we choose to act. We decide to post that photo due to the fact that everyone else is doing it, or we engage in behaviors that we normally wouldn't, just to get recognized by our peers. Let's take a look at this story from the news recently.
Another reason why parents should be keeping an eye out on how their teenagers are acting. There's a rumored challenge on social media that's having an impact on teens' mental health and well-being. Valley News Team's Molly Casey looked into the 48-hour challenge and then talked with a local psychiatrist to help you out.
The 48-hour challenge is just the latest in the string of dangerous games. The rumored game rewarded teens for the amount of panic they were able to create by disappearing for 48 hours without a trace. Before that, there was another social media trend that led to multiple tragic teen deaths. The Blue Whale Challenge asked teens to complete a list of tasks, with the final challenge being to commit suicide.
Evidently, this idea of peer influence is extremely relevant to society, and it is an important area of study. If we become aware of these biases in decision-making during adolescence, we can work to combat them. Seeing that the presence of peers biases our judgments in decision-making, how then does this strong biasing effect work? What then are the neurological underpinnings?
To understand adolescent behavior and the effects peers have on judgment and decision-making, one must first look at the neurodevelopmental timeline during adolescence. Despite extensive rewiring of cortical regions at this time, adolescent prefrontal cortex and other top-down control regions remain underdeveloped. On the other hand, some reward-seeking areas undergo extensive development, with some areas having a 2 to 7 times increase in dopamine activity in response to risky behaviors such as drug or alcohol use. To measure risky behavior and impulsivity, researchers use a task called the stoplight task. While undergoing fMRI analysis, participants were placed in a first-person driving game and told to reach the end as quickly as possible. Each intersection was marked by a stoplight that turns yellow. Participants must decide to stop or go before the stoplight turns red. If participants do not cross the intersection before the light turns red, they will crash and an unsuccessful attempt will be recorded. Participants were split into 3 age regions: adolescents, young adults, and adults. The task was performed, the percentage of risky decision-making was recorded, and the number of crashes were recorded. The task was performed in 2 conditions, one in an alone condition and one with peers present. Results showed that in the peer condition, only adolescents had a significant increase in percentage risky behavior and number of crashes. When a neuroimaging analysis was performed, they found that this correlated to an increased activity in the ventral striatum and the orbitofrontal cortex, regions associated with reward circuitry. Furthermore, adolescents showed less activation of the lateral PFC compared to adults, suggesting that not only do peers activate reward circuitry like drugs and alcohol, but that underdeveloped cognitive control regions in adolescents may fail to attenuate risky behaviors. Adolescents dedicate more attention to social rewards and increase value for rewards when in the presence of peers. As well as the orbitofrontal cortex, ventral striatum, and prefrontal cortex, the amygdala is important in this process because it detects environmental cues, which is responsible for the reaction to both positive and negative emotional stimuli, and can influence processing of the reward pathway. During adolescence, there is decreased activation of the amygdala, causing less sensitivity to harm, which can facilitate reckless behavior. Thus, the imbalance of brain region activity between reward circuitry, harm processing regions, and cognitive control centers during adolescence promotes exploratory and potentially risky and dangerous behavior.
As mentioned previously, peers activate reward circuitry during risky behavior and questionable decision-making. However, peer influence may actually serve a positive for adolescents. In this study, adolescents were given another measure of impulsivity, the balloon analog risk task. During this procedure, participants were shown a balloon and could choose how much they wished to inflate it. The greater the inflation, the more money they would win. However, if the balloon popped, all the money would be lost. Adolescents gave self-reports of their level of peer support, and results show that those reporting high levels of peer support had less risk-taking behavior. Furthermore, fMRI analysis showed that attenuation of the ventral striatum and insula of those with high peer support, suggesting that positive peer support can block activation of reward circuitry during risky behavior. If adolescents are exposed to positive examples of behavior, they are more likely to exhibit the same behavior. Individuals learn by observing the world around them through imitation and modeling. The social influences present during adolescent development are critical to their maturation. Observational studies have shown increases in volunteering, contributing to school organizations, and willingness to work with others upon engagement with other peers. Moreover, another study also found that adolescents donated significantly more to public goods groups when they were being observed by their peers, and even more so when receiving positive feedback from their peers. When discussing the effects of peer influence on judgment and decision-making, it is important to acknowledge that the effects are bidirectional. During adolescence, less time is spent with family and more is spent with peers, which is critical to the development of social skills. Social influence susceptibility is at an all-time high, making it imperative for parents to address the bias during their children's adolescence. Social influence is implicit and unconscious and can directly or indirectly influence the thought, feelings, and actions of others. Social influence leads to the development of social norms, which in turn help to determine behavior. Based on changes in neural circuitry, the social environment and context adolescents are subject to have significant effects on their development and behavior. It is important to provide positive influences at this time and to address these changes to help navigate adolescence in a healthy way. Peers and family provide the most significant contributions, but other social contexts such as coaches, team involvement, volunteering, teachers, and mentors can be equally as impactful. An adolescent's social network shapes their perception of adequate behavior. Therefore, it is important to provide positive influences to be integrated into their social norms. It is important for parents to be aware of the neurophysiological changes present in their children to best prevent biases towards negative social behavior. Perhaps bias training for adolescents could be beneficial in their school curriculums to make them aware of these changes. This would help promote awareness of their vulnerability and possibly redirect their thinking towards positive behavior and more conscious decisions. Due to similar activation in reward circuitry in peer presence, such as that with drugs or alcohol, therapies treating substance abuse may also attenuate peer influence on risky decision-making.